Hello everyone, back tuning into the winter 2018-19 Sleep Peak. So earlier on today we released the autumn forecast and you can find that video on the homepage at the moment. Later on today that video will be placed on the autumn forecast page. So there's nothing more we can do for the autumn. We've done all the updates. We've released the forecast. I'm just going to wait and see how the autumn unfolds now. So the long range bandwagon will roll on to winter. The next season ahead is going to be winter 2018-19, which means the winter updates will begin once again at Gazovitz in just 1 week's time on Sunday, the 2nd of September, just a week away now. And I thought just to get things together, start to whet your appetite a little bit, we'd go through the methodology, explain the things that we'll be looking at through the season of winter updates. And then at the end, we'll have a look at a few long-range seasonal models to see what they're showing for the winter at this very, very early stage. Just to say that Gazovitz Sunday Roundup is also on the homepage at the moment, so have a look at that and see what you think. To the final Sunday Roundup of the year, the Gazovitz Sunday Roundups will be put on the back burner now in favour of the winter updates, because basically what we look at in the Sunday Roundups are going to be covered in depth in winter updates, so we'd just be repeating ourselves if we carried on with the Gazovitz Sunday Roundup. So the last Gazovitz Sunday Roundup is on the homepage right now, and you'll be able to have a look at that when you're finished with this video, as well as the autumn forecast, of course. So let's talk you through the methodology then and the things we'll be looking at over the next few weeks. So every Sunday from next Sunday right way through to the end of November, we will do a Sunday. We will do a winter update, and the things we'll be looking at in those winter updates will include sea surface temperature anomalies. Now, of course, the first part of the winter updates and winter forecast is always the NAO forecast. We already have the NAO forecast in the bag. We did that on the first day of July. So we know that in terms of May sea surface temperature anomalies, the Atlantic was pointing us towards a positive NAO. And this chart is indicative of what we looked at during that NAO forecast. So these were the sea surface temperature anomalies in the North Atlantic during May. This is how things look. We have this cold area down here, had a warm area just there, and a cold area again through the tropics. And so that sea surface temperature anomaly profile points us towards the possibility of a positive NAO for the winter of 2018-19, and that was the NAO forecast. But we did say that's only a starting point, just gets us to base camp, if you like. It's just one small element of the winter forecast in the end, or it will just be one element of the winter forecast in the end. And so, of course, there are many, many other things that we're going to be monitoring through this season of updates. This is one of the latest sea surface temperature anomaly maps from NOAA currently, and you can see what is going on. We've got three specific areas that we'll be focusing on. We've got the ENSO region just here. The modelling wants to take us to an El Nino event through the course of this autumn and to have a weak or even moderate El Nino by the winter of 2018-19. So we'll be monitoring the sea surface temperature anomalies in the Pacific Ocean. And if we do go towards an El Nino, we'll be looking to see what impacts that could have. Will it be a Modoki El Nino, which is a central-based El Nino? That would be where this area is kind of warmer than this area. And when you get a central-based El Nino, it can be a signal for colder weather into America, sometimes into the UK and Europe as well. So we'll be covering El Nino in depth, particularly if the sea surface temperature anomalies do what the models are expecting them to do, which is go to an El Nino event through the course of this autumn, and have a lot more on that during the winter updates. We'll also be looking at the northern Pacific, and particularly this area just here in the northeastern part of the Pacific Ocean. Will that area go cold? If it does, that can sometimes be a signal for cooler weather into America and Europe. And then, of course, we'll be looking at the Atlantic Ocean. So we've got things warming up at the moment through the tropical Atlantic Ocean. We have lost those colder than average sea surface temperature anomalies. We've lifted the sea surface temperature anomalies up towards average. Will they warm up further? If they do, will that start to trigger Atlantic hurricane seasons? We always keep a very, very close eye on the Atlantic hurricane season, because there can be a connection between lots of hurricanes and an increased risk of northern blocking during the winter. So one of the things we will be monitoring is not only Atlantic sea surface temperature anomalies, we will be seeing whether things warm up in the tropics. If they do warm up, will that increase the risk of hurricanes? We'll be keeping a close eye on the Atlantic hurricane season this year. Also, further north in the Atlantic, we've got this cold area to the south of Greenland. Will that start to dissipate? You'll notice that around Newfoundland and over towards the eastern coast or the northeastern coast of the States, very warm sea surface temperature anomalies up there. And then we've got this warmer area up here in the Norwegian Sea. We had that last year. It looks like it's returned this year. So will that warmer area in the Norwegian Sea help us to get some northern blocking going? There is a theory that warm sea surface temperature anomalies in the Norwegian Sea might connect back to some of the colder conditions that we had last winter. We've got that warm sea surface temperature anomaly area again in the Norwegian Sea. So will that take us to a similar place where we was at last winter? As I say, the modelling is very keen to move us towards an El Nino event. At the moment, CFSV2 is going for a moderate El Nino event, as you can see there. So we will be keeping a close eye on that. However, the Jamstec model has us barely at El Nino threshold, much lower with the ENSO forecast for Jamstec compared to the CFSV2. So there's a lot of uncertainty about this potential El Nino for the winter of 2018-19. We will be keeping a very, very close eye on developments in the ENSO region and more widely in terms of those sea surface temperature anomalies. We'll also be keeping a close eye on solar activity. This is going to be almost certainly the solar minimum winter of solar cycle number 24. So this would be an image of the solar disk on our side of the disk, and there's no sunspots on this particular image from solarham.net, and we expect to see a lot of that over the coming season of winter updates. We will be monitoring very closely solar activity. As I say, we are expecting this to be the solar minimum winter of solar cycle number 24. This is the Gasworthy's solar tracker. Our good friend James Ackrew will be keeping this updated. Every week you'll see the solar tracker, and you can expect to see the lines very often, I think, down here during this season of winter updates as we flatline down at the bottom in terms of sunspot number. So solar activity will, as always, form a very big part of this year's winter updates. We'll be keeping a close eye on the QBO, the quasi-biennial oscillation. We are currently in a very strong easterly QBO phase. Easterly QBOs on this chart are depicted by these white areas. We're expecting to transition to a westerly QBO at some point in the near future. There's certainly no sign of it at the moment on this chart. When we do get a westerly QBO beginning to appear, you'll see a darker grey area moving down from the top of the chart into sort of the lower part of the chart. So that area, for example, is likely to go grey very shortly when we go into the westerly phase of the QBO. But there's no sign of that westerly QBO at the moment. We are in very strong easterly QBO condition, and we'll be having to wait to see how long it takes to get into westerly QBO. Remember, when you're in an easterly QBO, you weaken the strength of the zonal westerlies, and so an easterly QBO can increase your chance of a colder winter, whereas a westerly QBO can increase for zonal westerlies, and that sort of goes along with an increased possibility of a colder winter, of a milder winter, I should say, for the UK and Europe as well, as those zonal westerlies are strengthened. Not quite as straightforward as that, because there are several examples over the years of mild winters occurring with easterly QBOs and cold winters occurring with westerly QBOs. So you expect to hear a lot more about the QBO, the quasi-biennial oscillation, in the winter updates over the next few weeks. We'll be monitoring Arctic sea ice and Siberian snow cover, as always. So this yellow area just here is depicting the current state of Arctic sea ice in the North Pole. If I show you this chart, you'll be able to see that we are getting ever closer towards the minimum in terms of the ice extent for the Arctic for this year. Will bottom out sometime in September. This yellow line just here shows where we currently are in terms of Arctic sea ice. It's another big melt season, but we haven't gone yet into a death spiral. This green dash line is 2012. That's the death spiral year when we lost a huge amount of Arctic sea ice. We haven't got to that level at this point. We have got about another month though, or probably 3 weeks of melting to go in the Arctic, in the North Pole. So we'll see where this ends up in the next few weeks. Will it be somewhere down there, close to 2012, or will it be more up there? We will have to wait and see. That forms part of the earlier updates, and then we don't look at those from late September onwards, because the refreeze will then take place. So let's go back to this chart, and what you see when the refreeze takes place is this yellow area expands. The Arctic ice will return for the winter, and at the same time, this area, which is Siberia back to western Russia, this whole area will fill up with white, and white is snow. So particularly when we get to October, we'll keep a close eye on how quickly we're pushing that snow line westwards from Siberia into eastern Russia, and then eventually, as we get to the end of the season into November and December, we should find that snow line moving into Europe and also moving into Scandinavia as well. How quickly that happens is one of the things that we focus on through the winter updates, because if it happens very quickly, and particularly if snow cover develops over Scandinavia very quickly through this autumn, that might increase our chances of a colder winter, and we'll talk about that, of course, as we get through those winter updates. And then, as ever, we will have your reanalysis. So this is the reanalysis from our good friend James Ackwill for the winter of 2017-18. Last winter looked like this, and it had quite a strong blocking signal with higher than average heights to the north of the UK with this red area, and then we had below average heights to the east and the southeast of the UK with this blue area, and so that was pulling down the wind quite regularly from the north, or possibly even from an east to northeasterly direction. So that's the reason we had a colder winter. The GazWeathers.com winter 17-18 forecast did predict a colder winter, our coldest winter since 2012-13. That is indeed what occurred during the winter of 2017-18. It wasn't a particularly severe winter or very cold winter in its own terms until the very end. The final week of February did memorably become severely cold, and that severe cold weather persisted into the start of March. So we certainly ended last winter on a very cold note. And will we follow that through into this coming winter? Will we follow where we left off for winter 2017-18? Will that be where we pick up for 2018-19? We've had a very hot summer, of course, so the first couple of updates are almost certainly going to focus on winters that follow very hot summers. We will be answering those questions that a lot of you have asked us about whether there is any connection to cold winters and hot summers? We will be attempting to answer that in the first couple of winter updates, and then we'll go through the autumn following the weather patterns, and through reanalysis we will attempt to show what the weather patterns this autumn could mean for the winter, as well as using reanalysis to show you the impacts of the QBO state, ENSO state, and more. So reanalysis is always a big part of winter updates. Analogs guru James Ackrill is, as I speak, as I am saying this to you, as you're watching this, our Analogs guru James Ackrill is getting ready and is poised to bring those analogs to you. And then, as well as all of that, we will be focusing on the long-range models, of course, as ever. They'll be featuring in this season of updates as well. We will have 3 seasonal model roundups for you. And then when we come to issue the forecast, which will be at the end of November or the start of December, we will put the weather this winter methodology together with the seasonal model roundup that we do at the end of November, and we will bring the models together with methodology, and we will use that to create the forecast. So I thought, just to finish off for this sneak peek for winter 2018-19, I would just show you a few long-range models. So we're going to begin with the UK Met Office Glow C5. Now, this doesn't cover the full winter period yet. This only goes to November, December, January. You can see that UK Met model is going for an Atlantic driven sort of mid to early winter, so sort of late autumn to early and mid winter, I should say, with low pressure to the north, high pressure to the south, to the southwest, and it wants to bring in this flat westerly flow as well. So it's going for a mild sort of November to January. Temperature anomalies are coming out milder than average through much of northern Europe, and it's also going for not a desperately wet winter. Actually, that's the wrong chart, so let's just flip that over to months 4 to 6, and that looks more like it, with that westerly flow. It's going for a wetter than average winter. Let's check, make sure that was right. Yes, so it's going for a mild and wet winter, Atlantic driven, at least for November through to January. Next month we will have the full winter period going from December to February. CFS V2 looks like this at the moment. It's got below average heights to the west of us. Otherwise, not much else going on, and it does look as though the jet stream may be a little bit displaced to the south, if anything. We're waiting to see whether this area starts to fill up with yellow. If it does, then that would be a signal for northern blocking. Temperature anomalies from the CFS V2 for this winter are coming out significantly milder than average through most of Europe at the moment. Precipitation anomalies are coming out close to average, but it does possibly hint at being a little bit wet to wetter to our southwest, which maybe implies that the jet stream might be on a little bit of a southerly track. Don't worry about those warmer than average temperature anomalies. The CFS seems to be always going for warm weather in the winter. This is CANSIPS, and this is the mean sea level pressure anomaly for the winter of 2018-19. This one's quite interesting. It has below average pressure to our south, and it hints at some above average pressure up to the north. It implies a jet stream is going to be to our south, so we're placed on the cold side of the jet. You can see all of this red that's going on up here. That looks like a strong Siberian high ridging into Scandinavia. So the temperature anomaly for this winter with the CANSIPS model is from tropicaltidbits.com, by the way. You can find a link to most of these long-range websites on the links page. So the temperature anomaly is coming out close to average for this winter with CANSIPS, which is quite cool for this model. Normally it's going milder than average. Precipitation looks interesting as well for the winter. It's drier than average to the north of the UK and wetter than average to the south, which again goes along with the idea that we might have some northern blocking and we might have a jet stream going to our south. Mean sea level pressure anomalies on a month-by-month basis look like this. So December actually looks quite mild and wet. The jet stream is coming through the UK, and although there's a little bit of red over here, it's more over towards the Canadian side of Greenland. So that's probably a mild and wet start to the winter. However, January looks much more interesting. Just look at that for January, with below average pressure or low pressure to the south, and then we've got all of these red colours to our north. That's indicative of high pressure sitting to the north, or higher than average pressure. It also extends back over here to quite a strong ridge into Scandinavia and from Siberia as well. That looks like a potentially cold January, and then February looks like that again. We've got the high pressure signalled to be up to the north, particularly the northeast of us, with low pressure signalled to be to the south. You'd expect the possibility, anyway, of bringing in some easterly winds. The temperature anomalies for December with CAN-SIPS are coming out close to average. I'm including this, by the way, showing data, because a lot of people have asked me about what CAN-SIPS is showing this month. It has generated quite a bit of interest on social media and on the forum, so I thought we'd have a little bit of a more extended look at this one. So December is coming out close to average. January also comes out close to average, perhaps surprisingly. You would have thought January might be a colder than average signal, but still close to average then. But February does actually go colder than average. Those temperature anomalies are coming out colder than average with CAN-SIPS in February. So quite an interesting update from CAN-SIPS this month. JamsTech IOD looks like that, so it's going for a bit of a north-south split this winter. Scotland and Northern Ireland are coming out a little bit cooler than average. England and Wales coming out a little bit warmer than average with JamsTech. And then precipitation-wise, overall quite a wet winter, above average precipitation being seen. You'll notice it is drier than average, though, around Iceland. That possibly goes up to Greenland, and that could again be a little bit indicative of a southerly tracking jet stream. And then finally, the Bayesian Climate Centre. And if you cast your mind back to last year's seasonal model roundups for the winter of 2017-18, you'll remember that most of the long-range models were very set on a milder than average winter. The Bayesian Climate Centre was one of the few models that did actually pick out the chance of a colder winter. It didn't go desperately cold, but it did hint, anyway, at the chance of a colder winter. I think the Bayesian Climate Centre is also one of the few models that picked up on the hot summer that we just experienced. So I do rate the Bayesian Climate Centre quite highly, and particularly November's seasonal model roundup. The last one we do in November will be very, very interesting, I think, to see what the Bayesian Climate Centre is showing. At the minute, this is a 500 millibar height anomaly with above average heights very close to the UK. This 200 millibar heights, I should say, very close to the UK, just a little bit to our west maybe, and starting to hint at a little bit of a west-northwesterly influence. Temperature anomalies at the moment with the Bayesian Climate Centre are milder than average for the UK. Most parts of Europe also being signalled to have a mild winter. And the precipitation anomaly, that comes out a little bit above average. So it's going for quite a wet winter, actually, for the UK. Most parts of Europe also coming out a little bit wetter than average. Notice it is drier than average, though, to our west in the middle of the Atlantic. So this possibly hints at a mid-Atlantic ridge, which could at the very least allow for some colder incursions from the north or the northwest. It's very, very early days for those seasonal models, and we'll have more on those over the next 3 months, I can assure you of that. So that sums it all up. That's everything we're going to be focusing on in the next 3 months. We're going to do winter updates pretty much every week from next Sunday right way through to the last Sunday of November, and then after that we will release the winter forecast. Juxtaposed to that will be the seasonal model roundups. They'll be released probably on the Saturdays, the final Saturdays of those 3 months. And yeah, it's all about to start kicking off once again. So these winter updates are always very exhaustive in terms of what we talk about. They're also very exhausting for myself to do them, but you seem to enjoy them. So we love to give you the content that you enjoy at Gazmovids. And so, well, buckle up, because here we go again. Another season of winter updates is about to get underway. Will I see you next week? Hopefully I will. Come back to the website next Sunday for the first winter 2018-19 update. I'll see you there. Thanks for watching.